the effort to overthrow the Senate by the left with violence and intimidation tactics didn't work. And thankfully, a majority of the senators voted for Judge Kavanaugh, despite efforts, as I point out, to disrupt the Senate. And he was confirmed on Saturday. He was sworn in almost immediately, and he was ceremoniously sworn in at the White House on Monday evening. And I was honored to be invited by the president to attend that swearing in the East Room of the White House. So that was exciting to go there on Judicial Watch's behalf, and I was there representing you as well. And it was quite an event, and I was particularly glad that President Trump began his remarks at the event by apologizing to Judge Kavanaugh on behalf of America for what he had to go through to be confirmed to the Supreme Court of the United States. It's a small room. I'll take you a little bit, give you a little inside information as to what goes on at these White House events. You're ushered into what is, relatively speaking, a small room given the number of people that are there. You had senators there, you had federal court judges there, and I was particularly gratified to see the entire Supreme Court also joined the event. They were there in the East Room as well. So Justice Kavanaugh gave an excellent speech as well. His family was there. So it was a real honor to be present, to witness a little bit of excitement and celebration after weeks and weeks of torture and abuse by leftists in the Senate, their allies, and in some cases witnesses who were maliciously making up information to try to destroy Judge Kavanaugh and his family. And I'm thankful that Justice Kavanaugh is now on the Supreme Court. I think he's going to be a leader on the court. Despite all the craziness about his, the specious allegations about his attacking women, which were unfounded, we know that Justice Kavanaugh is a conservative jurist. And I think he's going to be a leader on the court. I think we're going to be quite pleased with the results. Now, it's not to say he's going to rule the right way every time. I don't agree with every justice on the court, even the most conservative justices, the way they rule on particular issues. But I think he's going to be a reliable voice for the rule of law, for an approach to the Constitution that respects it, as opposed to the traditional liberal activist approach, where these liberal politicians in robes substitute their own judgment for what the law says or what the Constitution says. So we have Justice Gorsuch on the court, Justice Kavanaugh on the court. So the president must be real pleased, because it's rare that presidents even get two justices to appoint to the Supreme Court. And this president has gotten two of those, two opportunities in his first 2 years in office. So the question, there was an assault on the Senate. There was an attempt to overthrow the Senate through violence and intimidation. Senators were being threatened. Senator Collins, who heroically came out in favor of Judge Kavanaugh's confirmation to the Supreme Court, was under attack. Protesters went to her home. I'm aware of some conservative voices who are up on the court to show, up in the Senate, to show their support for Justice Kavanaugh. Some of them were assaulted. So leftists were assaulting conservative women who were showing up to lawfully show their support for Judge Kavanaugh's confirmation. And you can bet the senators were being intimidated. I was aware that staff had locked their doors for fear of violence, and that it was a near riot situation. So the Senate's got to make some tough choices here about public access to its building during these controversial situations. The Senate has to decide how it's going to handle the corruption in its ranks. Remember, we had issues related to the leaking of confidential information about Justice Kavanaugh. We had Cory Booker, the senator from New Jersey, happily leak information or put confidential information onto the internet in violation of Senate rules, the violation of which would cause or should cause his expulsion under the rule. And of course, only Judicial Watch went in there and filed an ethics complaint against Senator Booker. So here's a little project for you. You've already been told repeatedly by yours truly to call the Senate about Justice Kavanaugh's confirmation. You have its number. It's 202-224-3121. We'll call the Senate and ask your senators to support an ethics move against Senator Booker over his knowing and admitted violations of rules that, if he's found liable for, would require his expulsion from the Senate. The question for the Senate is it going to let mob rule run the Senate, or is it going to be a rule of law approach? And it's one thing to have mob rule from the outside and have these leftist agitators go in there and try to disrupt, threaten, and really, as I say, overthrow the Senate, the operations of the Senate. But what about the internal disruption, where you've got people like Senator Booker breaking the rules, again, disrupting the Senate, trying to overthrow the Senate in many ways, and is he going to be punished for it? Now, other senators supported him, so there may be investigations required there. And you can bet Judicial Watch isn't going to stop. We're going to keep on pushing this. There may be other ethics complaints we file against senators. We're looking at the behavior of outside groups and lawyers and witnesses. We're going to be asking all the questions, because the left has decided that violence and intimidation is now something they're going to use, and it's been thrust into the forefront of leftist tactics to take back power. And you know how bad it is? You had Hillary Clinton out there just this week say, for instance, the former nominee for the presidency, saying that we shouldn't be civil anymore. That we'll only be civil if Democrats take control of the House and the Senate again, or take control of Congress again. What is the opposite of civil? Civil war? Violence? Attorney General Holder, the disgraced Attorney General under Barack Obama, disgraceful as well. Remember, he was found in contempt for his cover-up of the Fast and Furious records. And of course, he allowed all those Fast and Furious guns to walk out of the United States into Mexico. And the plan was that we hope these guns show up at crime scenes. Well, they did. Hundreds of people were killed as a result of Eric Holder's Fast and Furious program, including Brian Terry, a Border Patrol agent. So he already has hundreds of deaths on his hands. So he's quoted, there was a videotape of him speaking to an audience earlier this week, where he said, Michelle Obama says, when they go low, we go high. And you know what he said? No, when they go low, we kick them. So you have the former Attorney General of the United States under Barack Obama advocating violence. I don't know how you trade. Now, he walked back that later. He said, well, I didn't mean violence. That's just fake news. Oh, come on. He said what he said. You had Hillary Clinton advocate violence, inciting violence. You had Eric Holder do that. You had protesters do that. You had senators defending the protesters doing that. You had Cory Booker breaking the rules. And then, of course, over in the House, what did you have? You had Maxine Waters talking about people confronting and getting in the face of cabinet officials of President Trump. You had one opinion person talk about pursuing people where they sleep. Outright illegal behavior. This is the left. They're taking off the gloves to the degree they've even had them on. Now, I think our approach has got to be a rule of law approach. And this isn't Democrat versus Republican. This isn't conservative versus liberal. This is those of us who want to defend the republic versus those of us who want to overturn our Republican form of government through mob violence and mob rule.